Welcome to the Infinite Restaurants Podcast, where we share insights, perspectives, and stories from the front lines of hospitality. I'm your host, Andrew Cook.
I went to BBQ Summer Camp in the Meat Sciences Department of Texas A&M. I started chasing stories about barbecue on the internet. There was a guy named Daniel Vaughn. He mentioned BBQ Summer Camp, and I went, what? It's like saying hot tub time machine. You just jump in it. When I say BBQ Summer Camp out loud in a bar, like half the guys in the bar turn around and say, what did you say?
Yeah, it's like Scooby hearing Scooby Snack. Infinite Restaurants is brought to you by Harbor Food Service, the local, family-owned food service distributor wholly dedicated to Northwest communities. On today's program, we are talking with Jack Timmons. Jack Timmons is the founder and namesake of Jack's Barbecue in the greater Seattle area. Jack is going to share with us stories of how he and his company have adapted into the COVID-19 era, methods that he's employed towards developing his workforce, and meat doctors. Yes, being a doctor in meat is a real thing. Hello, Jack. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Andy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. We're in interesting times, aren't we?
The weirdest of times.
Yeah. We're in late June, year 2020. For anybody who might be listening to this in an archive, but we are surfing the wave of change in the industry, aren't we?
Yeah. The world has somewhat gone off a cliff this year, it seems.
You know, something that I want to talk about probably later in the show, maybe at the end of the show, is we just kind of speculate what kind of effect this could have on the industry at large moving forward. Before we get into all that, and we sort of get kind of highbrow and high-brained, let's give the listeners a chance to understand who you are. So, Jack, you weren't born and bred into the restaurant industry. Tell us the story of how you became a restaurateur.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and barbecue was part of the food group you ate there, like Mexican food and Gulf Coast seafood and Southern food, chicken fried steak. Probably ate barbecue once every week or two my entire, life. And studied engineering at Texas A&M, came out to Seattle on a job with Boeing. Met a local and settled down, traveled around the world doing computer projects, ended up at Microsoft for many years. And then about 2012, I went to BBQ Summer Camp in the Meat Sciences Department of Texas A&M.
There's a meat sciences department at Texas A&M?
There's a very, very serious meat sciences department, guys with PhDs in meat.
Wow.
And yeah, I lived in Seattle. I had a house with a backyard, and I had a smoker in my backyard all my adult life. I started chasing stories about barbecue on the internet. There was a guy named Daniel Vaughn, who was a blogger who'd reviewed hundreds, now thousands, of barbecue restaurants just in Texas. And he waxed poetic about the brisket and the fatty versus the lean and the tenderness and the smoke ring and all that. And I just went down that rabbit hole with him. He's now the barbecue editor at Texas Monthly Magazine. They actually have a barbecue editor.
So a doctor of meat is a barbecue editor.
No,
okay.
He's a writer. He's a writer for the magazine. But he mentioned BBQ Summer Camp, and I went, what? It's like saying hot tub time machine. You just jump in it, right?
Sure.
You don't have to think about that.
Hot tub time machine.
So instead of going to like Paris for a summer vacation that year, I went to College Station, Texas, and I took BBQ Summer Camp, and I toured all the super famous Central Texas barbecue places, which is the kind of style of barbecue that we do at Jack's in Seattle.
I'm just so entertained by everything that you just said, that there are doctors of meat. I just think that's amazing.
It's so cool. And these guys, they teach barbecue, they teach meat, they have people that get degrees in meat sciences, and they work in the food industry and stuff like that.
Was it a big surprise when you turned to your wife and said, I don't want to go to Paris. I want to go on a barbecue cooking tour of Texas with meat doctors. How did that go over? Was that a surprise?
I think when you say BBQ Summer Camp, people know that's like Disneyland for adults.
Right.
You just can't pass that up. When I say BBQ Summer Camp out loud in a bar, like half the guys in the bar turn around and say, what did you say?
Yeah, it's like Scooby hearing Scooby Snack.
Too fun to pass up.
Yeah. So you went on this tour. You were an engineer for Boeing. You moved over into Microsoft, and as a barbecue hobbyist, you just got captured by this whole thing, didn't you? And what happened then?
You
Did
know,
you?
I came back and I felt like Moses coming down the mountain with the tablets of knowledge. I felt like I get it. Like
Uh-huh.
I know what this is all about now. And so I bought an offset smoker, an 8-foot long one from a restaurant in Seattle where neighbors were complaining about the barbecue smoke. And so I put it in my backyard in Madrona and I just started using it. I cooked for fire departments. I cooked for friends. I just started doing barbecue. And then I heard about a guy named Daniel Delaney from Brooklyn, and he had gone down to Austin to interview Aaron Franklin, make a video magazine article on him at one point. And he had an aha moment. Went, wow, this is really the real deal. And he bought a smoker. He rented a trailer and filled it up with wood and drove back to New York. And he created something called Brisket Laboratory. And he said, I'm going to have a series of pop-ups this summer. If you want to be on my mailing list, give me your email and I'll invite you, limited seating. And it just took off. He got like thousands of people signed up. I have a friend from Texas who lives in Brooklyn. She actually sent it to me like, oh my God, look at this. This is so cool. And so he said, I'm just going to sell, a couple thousand tickets, and he had these events. He charged $25 and he'd invite 100 people. And he sold like in 2 or 3 weeks, he sold like 4,000 or 20. No, I remember he sold 2,500 tickets. So he made $65,000 before he even started. And I went, oh, that's a business model. Like I had thought about food trucks, but I never really liked them. I don't want to sit in a box and talk to customers through square.
There's a lot of hustle in there, isn't there?
Yeah, and in Seattle, you stand out in the drizzle eating a sandwich. It's just not,
Right.
And so I wanted to do events. So I created something called Seattle Brisket Experience. I was a big Jimi Hendrix fan, so like Jimi Hendrix Experience. Experience is a cool word in Seattle, like the Experience Museum, And $25, and I put it out on Facebook and Twitter, and I sold 100 tickets. It took about 4 weeks to get 100 tickets sold. And then I did it monthly for a year and a half. And then the next one sold out in 3 weeks. The next one, 2 weeks. The next one, 1 week.
When was this on a calendar?
This was 2013, 2014.
Okay, so about a year after you did your barbecue boot camp.
Yeah, and it just all of a sudden became the hottest ticket in town. All of a sudden, I would go to a brewery like in Ballard and say, hey, can I bring 100 people here to drink your beer? And they're like, yeah.
No.
And I'd rent chairs. Yeah, I'd rent tables and chairs. I'd hire a band, and I'd put together a barbecue rave. And I sell 100 tickets. I smoke all the meats in my backyard. My wife and friends would make the sides, which was probably illegal now that I think about it. But
the statute of limitation is passed. You're free.
Right. We sold out every one of those, and they kept selling out faster and faster. And Daniel Vaughn came to town to do an event for Tom Douglas, and he said, you've got a real smoker. Can I smoke some beef ribs and pork ribs and stuff in your backyard? I'm like, sure. And then ABC News came in my backyard and filmed us making barbecue. Took it to Tom Douglas event, and Tom went crazy on the beef ribs. Like, oh my God, I've never had anything that good. Amazon filmed us at the event, so he started getting famous, and I was right there with him. So I got known, and that last event I did, I think it sold out in like 9 minutes. I just mentioned it on Twitter. The Tom Douglas event was fun because some of the beef ribs left over, he took to one of his restaurants, and Sir Mix-a-Lot ate one and had a wow moment and said, who the hell made this? And he started chasing me on Twitter until I met him. And so all of a sudden I was like a barbecue celebrity.
Yeah, he likes big beef and he cannot lie.
Actually, I've seen t-shirts in Texas that say I like big butts, like pork butts, and I cannot lie. I asked him if he was getting, are you getting royalties on that?
Doubtful. Just like I don't think milk's getting royalties off the got whatever anybody else wants to put onto it. Was all this like, these barbecue raves? Is that what made you decide, you know what, I would just be a happier person if I was just doing this all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of had a midlife crisis where I had worked in corporate world in computer companies for, all my adult life.
Right.
And my daughter was grown up, and all of a sudden I'm like, now what do I want to do? And I started thinking about it. And the barbecue thing had never entered my mind. I'd never thought about. I had never even worked in a restaurant,
Right.
and and it seemed like a horrible idea. And everybody I knew who was in the industry said it was horrible.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's hard, and you go out of business, and everybody's crazy, and you know, and this and that. So I wasn't interested in it. But after the pop-ups, I thought maybe I could just do this like once a week. There's a famous barbecue place in Texas. Actually, they got voted the #1 barbecue place in Texas last year, and it's called Snow's Barbecue in Lexington, Texas, and they're only open on Saturdays. And I thought, well, I could do that instead of once a month, once a week, if I had a place to store all the gear and do it more easily. I started looking for diners that were only open Monday through Friday, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get your place on the weekends? And I started looking at commissaries, like maybe I should do this legally. And and then I found a place on Airport Way that was for rent for cheap because they had a guy that wasn't paying rent. They were just trying to get somebody in here, and it was a big place, an old dive bar. And I thought, what the hell? I got a bunch of buddies who all chipped in and just bought it.
What year was this?
That was 2014. We bought the place and fixed it up. It was a dive bar, needed some love. Didn't spend much money though,
Right.
and opened in the fall of 2014.
What's the state of the Jack BBQ Empire right now?
So we opened in 2014, and then a year and a half ago, I guess the beginning of 2019, we opened up a place in Columbia Tower and a place in South Lake Union. And the Columbia Tower is just a food court place for lunch, breakfast and lunch, breakfast tacos. We do really good breakfast tacos with barbecue meats on them. And the place in Columbia or South Lake Union was a smaller version of Soto, 50, 60 seats instead of 150 seats with a full bar and everything. But we smoke all the meats at Soto and make the sides, and we drive them over to those other locations.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a hub and spoke model. We do all the quality control and production here, and at the other places we sell them. And of course, we make salads and fry things and
Right.
make cocktails, stuff like that at the other place.
So thank you, Jack. You've provided me with a perfect segue to move into a topic that I wanted to ensure that we could explore together, and that is the topic of adaptation. Being adaptive, being resilient, these are great personal traits to develop for any individual as they want to move through the world. But for a restaurant, I think it is probably one of the most vital traits that you can embody in the way that you organize. We serve communities, we serve the cultures that we are planted in, and when the entire world is upended with a global pandemic, which equates to sheltering in place and every aspect of our lives being touched, adapting to serve those needs is so important. And you've done a lot of really creative things to pivot, and you seem to be perfectly suited for that sort of challenge as it comes down the pike. Can you talk about what you and your team have done in these past few months and maybe connect that to best practices in general, whether we're in a pandemic or not?
Yeah. So I've always had a very open mind about, business models and what you can do. Like I know a guy who makes sushi and flash freezes it and vacuum seals it and sends it to cruise ship lines and armed service bases and stuff. So I thought about doing that wholesale. I've talked to grocery stores about selling our product in grocery stores. So when this thing first happened, a lot of restaurants shut down. Like if you're downtown and you're semi-fine dining, you're done.
Right.
There's nobody in hotels, nobody in offices. Your product that you make isn't something you would put in a box, a fancy piece of fish with a sauce on it and send it home to somebody for the price point you're charging. It's just like that. But for us, barbecue is traditionally a to-go business. Like
Mhm.
every barbecue joint has a to-go percentage of their business. So we did shrink down. We laid off lots of really nice people, probably 50 people out of 60, and went down to our skeleton crew. And we kept working those 3 locations doing to go. And we survived. We weren't profitable really, but we didn't bleed to death either. And so we thought, well, this is not bad. If you scale, the thing about the restaurant industry is you've got three main buckets. You've got, and it's considered cost of sales. Like if you sell $100 worth of something, $33 you spent on labor, $30 you spent on cost of goods, 20% on expenses, rent, insurance, vans, everything. You get a 10% profit margin if you're lucky.
If you're lucky,
That,
yeah.
right. So the food part you can dial back. You just buy less food. In the meat business, you can run out of meat, and some of the processing plants got shut down. We have very deep relationships with people. We've stuck with the same vendors for many, many years, and so they actually took care of us.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those restaurants that hops between vendors, like whoever's got the cheapest deal, then you really don't have any friends. So we've had some long-term commitments, which helped us. So we didn't run out of meat. The labor you can dial down. It wasn't as bad. I mean, it was horrible for people, but then they got pretty good, unemployment checks and the bonus checks at $600 a week. Some people were making more than they were making when they were working.
Right.
It's just that when we started rehiring, some of them didn't want to come back,
Uh-huh.
which was funny. But so if you dial back labor and your cost of goods, you still have your expenses.
You're doing a lot of catering too. That was a big part of your business, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that went to zero.
Yeah.
So catering stopped. I mean, all the business stuff we did, lunch for 100 people and stuff like that went to zero. So we lost, well, initially when it happened, everybody just freaked out. We went down to, 40% of sales or something like that. And then it grew back, but we never, that 30% of sales, 20%, whatever that number is for catering and stuff, it disappeared. But the family takeout business grew.
Mm-hmm.
We got up, and we also expanded the geography for the delivery services. Caviar and Grubhub, they'll only deliver so many miles, like a 3-mile radius or whatever it is. I don't know how many miles, but around your restaurant.
Right.
And we knew that between here and South Lake Union, we covered a certain part of the city. But what we did was we opened up a pop-up in Bellevue. We know we have a customer base over there. They come on the weekends mostly. We went to a little diner that's only open for breakfast and lunch. And we said, hey, can we pay you rent and use it at dinner time? And they're like, hell yeah, because nobody's buying an omelet to go, for breakfast. And so we opened up a place over there, and we take all of our meats and sides over there, just like we do the other locations, and we serve them in to-go orders. And we have an online ordering system we set up. And so that business is taken off, and delivery services too expand into that region. And that was successful. So we opened one south of town and one north of town. We have one south in Algona, and which is where we're planning to open a new restaurant this fall, knock on wood.
Right.
And then we opened one in Ravenna at a Portage Bay restaurant, because they're only open for breakfast and lunch. So that grew, that replaced the Columbia Tower went to nothing,
Mm-hmm.
because everything emptied out of that building and emptied out of downtown. South Lake Union's lunch went to nothing because all the Amazon people stopped going to work. But the dinner crowd at South Lake Union grew because there's only a handful of restaurants open, and there's a lot of apartments there. And I know what happened. Every one of them went to Whole Foods and bought a $30 chicken and cooked it one night. The hell with that. They started going back to places like us and ordering food to go.
Yeah. How did you know that you had such a following in certain areas that you could start to target where you wanted to create these pop-ups?
I worked at Microsoft for 13 years in Redmond, and I know a lot of people over there, and I talk to customers a lot, and a lot of them would say they're from the East Side.
Okay.
And they would always say, when are you going to open a place on the East Side? And we did I mentioned that I was going to do a place on the East Side eventually, and like 425 magazine from the East Side interviewed me and talked about it and stuff. They're raring to go.
Right. So you knew this organically, just because you're out there connecting.
Yeah. And it's a risk worth taking, because for us to set up on the East Side didn't cost anything. We went to an existing restaurant, they're licensed, we're licensed, we've got catering license. We're just a guest chef, there. We brought over one of our Alto Shams, which is a heat holding box for the meats. We got another point of sale system, and that's it. We had staff that were, we wanted to hire back, so it gave us an excuse to hire back 3 or 4 more people for each of those pop-ups too. So we hired back, a third of our staff to service those places. So didn't cost anything to get the ball rolling. We pay a percentage of sales for rent with a minimum and a maximum. And so, yeah, I was like, well, why wouldn't we do this? So we popped up 3 of those in about a month's time.
I'm curious, how much of your takeout business, your offsite dining, is through third party versus direct ordering for pickup?
Actually, for Bellevue, it's 100% direct ordering. We never took on the delivery services because the direct ordering was so successful.
Right.
You don't have to pay that 15%, fee. Like in a 10% profit margin business, 15%. Some of them were 30%. Like Uber Eats.
Right.
And those guys 30%, which we just stopped doing at one point. We just said it's not beneficial for us. Their justification is that, well, you're not hiring any extra labor, and you're not paying any more rent. And so it's really just you're spending more money on food, but that 30% you're still going to walk away with a profit. And we're like, we actually are hiring more people because and it's completely obvious today because there aren't any people coming into the restaurant. Everything is going out the door. So
yeah,
there is that 30% hopefully done. The city of Seattle did do one good thing, which was they limited the fees that restaurants could charge or that restaurant delivery services could charge. They limited it to 15%.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they passed a law and it was kind of going in that direction anyhow. Like we turned off the 30% guys, we stay with the 15% guys. But Bellevue, we didn't have to do that. South Lake Union's the largest percentage is delivery services. People just want it. They don't, they just push a button on your phone and it shows up. And if it costs an extra $8 for that to get dropped off, they don't care.
Right. Do you think you'll ever do your own delivery?
I don't think so. It's too regulated and it's too hard to get drivers. I mean, if we're like Jimmy John's or Domino's, you're gigantic, then it kind of makes sense. But I look at that model, like the problem is, we'll have 30 orders for tomorrow night, but most of them are between 5 and 6 p.m.
Right.
You need just a bunch of people to do that. And so you need a rush of people for a moment of time. And it's just hard to organize that. And then now they're adding all these requirements. You have to pay it. Seattle just passed a law. You have to pay the drivers an extra $2.50. The delivery services have to for hazard pay or something. I don't know. It's just heavily regulated.
Right.
And,
it's just not a quagmire you feel like getting into right now, huh?
I wish there were a co-op version of that where all the restaurants in Seattle would get together and agree to work with one provider and keep it at 15%. So we don't have to play this game.
Right.
And they're always throwing specials at you or bumping you down in the list. So when people search for barbecue, your name comes up last instead of where.
Right.
Because they're always trying to get you to pay more for them to sell you more
to get that SEO on it. We know each other because I'm an operations consultant through Harbor Food Service, and I've been working with some restaurateurs in Lewis County who are so frustrated with the lack of third-party delivery service that they're teaming up to hire a couple local people to do deliveries just for this small group of restaurateurs. That started to get a foothold before all this. Nothing's happened with that until we sort of bounce back to normal. But you'd mentioned something earlier about labor, and I've talked to a lot of people that, you're making maybe 25 cents on a dollar, but you're still making 25 cents, whatever that is. But when you plug into so many of these third-party services, you start to have to pay somebody just to manage all that in real time, and labor ain't cheap.
It's not, and they are complicated. And every time, say, we're a barbecue joint, say we run out of chicken on Friday night. Well, there's chicken in the family picnic meal.
Right.
There's in the double trouble meal. There's chicken in 8 other in a chopped salad meal. So imagine going into your menu online for your restaurant, activating all those things and doing it for 3 delivery services too. I mean, it's a pain.
Yeah.
campaign. And every time we change the menu, you have to go into all these different menus and update them and stuff like that. It requires quite a bit of time.
Yeah. We're going to spend a hot minute listening to a word from our sponsor, Harbor Food Service. I recently had a conversation with Justin Erickson, President and CEO of Harbor Foods Group, and he had some illuminating insights into what local means to him.
To me, local can mean a lot of different things. Local is hometown, where you grow up, your local connections, the local businesses that are established here. But local can also extend beyond that. I've lived my whole life in the Pacific Northwest, work with a lot of suppliers that are local Pacific Northwest suppliers. Ice cream that comes from Oregon, for example, to me, that's local from this region of the country in terms of production, and a lot of the products that we deal with, that is local to me. I think about local as the Northwest, and we like to support that cause, through business and who we partner with, who we work with, but also think of our community in broad terms like that.
All right, we're going to get back to our conversation now with Jack Timmons from Jack's Barbecue, and he's about to unpack what technology he uses and why. Jack, you've got a technology background. Technology is important in restaurants. How have you leveraged technology to your favor?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to get your accounting set up right and to work with a really good accounting company.
Mm-hmm.
You manage the business to the P&L, the profit and loss statement, and we do it on a weekly basis, with our staff, and we do it on a monthly basis with our accounting company. You look at the labor costs, you look at the cost of food, you look at all your expenses, and you see, well, this is how much money you make. And it's a fine line. Like I said, it's somewhere between 0 and 10% profit margin, any given time. And so if you slip under, then you look at your labor and you say, well, we have too many people working on a Wednesday night. Why do we have full staff on a Wednesday night when we're doing half the number of orders? Things like that. So you really have to, I've got an engineering background, but I also have an MBA, right? So I'm good at crunching numbers in a spreadsheet. And so that's like super duper important. Some of the systems we've invested in recently, we got a scheduling software, 7 shifts that everybody has on their phone.
Yeah.
And that's super useful for updating everybody, because that used to be the worst job,
Right.
managing the schedule for a bunch of people who are constantly changing when they want to show up or not show up. And you kind of put it at them and say, well, if you need to exchange a shift with somebody, then just throw it out there in the system and let somebody else get it. Don't make management, babysit that through
Right.
you. It's a good way to communicate with everybody. We also have a new inventory system where you track everything coming in and coming out. And for us, we buy a lot of meat. We're smoking about 3 tons of meat a week. And, that's very expensive. The price of brisket goes up $1 a pound. We lost 25% of our profit one year that happened. Yeah. So it's something else you really have to manage.
What's the name of this inventory management system?
Foodager. Yeah.
How does that help you?
Well, it has a nice interface for taking inventory and for tracking invoices to see if prices are going up. Like, why did tomatoes double in price last week on our invoice?
I see.
It gives you red flags on things like that when there's changes and whatnot. And it allows you to manage, inventory is a huge part of the business. Like, how many cases of Jack Daniels do we have? Why is the cost of beer higher per cost of goods higher this month than last month? Are the lines foamy? Do we need to fix the lines because they're foaming up the beer? Stuff like that.
So having this kind of a software, does that give you a chance to pivot in the moment, or it just gives you kind of a chance to, it's like, we've got to be here's a red flag. We've got to be aware of something.
It does. I mean, one thing that we did to pivot in the moment for South Lake Union, even before COVID, our sales weren't full on there. We had more capacity in the kitchen. So we opened a ghost restaurant. And a ghost restaurant is for the delivery services. So we opened a fried chicken business called Jack's Chicken Shack.
Cool.
If you go on Caviar, you can find Jack's Chicken Shack in the South Lake Union area. And it's fried chicken. It's a different, logo and menu look and feel and stuff like that. The ordering, they'll if they're barbecue fans, they'll figure it out eventually. But
Right.
it's all of our same sides: coleslaw, potato salad, everything else. But we added fried chicken, and so you get fried chicken with all those same kind of sides and stuff like that. But for us to start that business, we could go into our software. We could see exactly how much it costs to produce that piece of fried chicken. All of
Interesting.
all of our menu items now, we know exactly how much it costs to make them. And that was somewhat surprising. Some of them cost more than others. There's more labor involved. There's more dairy involved. Cans of, black eyed peas cost more than they used to. And it's like, wow. So if you're going to give away something in a special, or if you're going to add something to the menu, how much does it cost to produce it? And how much do you need to sell it for to make a profit?
So this kind of software is giving you like real time plate costing. So
Right.
okay, and that'll gives you the insight to prepare and plan and make sure that you're not just bleeding money out through a few dishes because you don't know any better.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Like, we're going to introduce something, or we're in this business. How do we make a profit? You can sell food forever
Right.
and not make a profit. That's
Yeah.
real easy. Making a profit's hard. And COVID, to be actually the whole, thing has been hard because people aren't coming in and buying beers, which are more profit margin. They're not buying as many hush puppies, which are higher profit margin. They're buying
Right.
just buying big piles of meat, which are expensive for us to make and have a much lower profit margin. Whereas you make a lot more profit margin on a Coca-Cola than you do on a pound of brisket.
Yeah. So you've leaned into technology for inventory management. You've leaned into technology to create these ghost restaurants or virtual restaurants. Where does your point of sale system come in?
So that's super important because that is how you track labor. Everybody logs in and out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you record all of your sales. And you can, that is the number one thing that we run every single day is what were our sales? What were our labor hours? What's the percentage there? Was it a good day or a bad day? What was, if somebody comped a check, why did they comp a check? Why'd you why did somebody order a brisket and you gave it, you didn't charge them for it? Those kinds of things. Yeah, that's super important. We're using Toast, which is a good in the cloud system. We used to use a local one, but it was very PC oriented, and the PC needed updating and stuff. And it was just old technology. And so we moved to Toast a few years ago, and it's been working out. That's super important. I also, funny you asked this question. I just signed up for an MIT class on artificial intelligence. They have a 6-week online program. And I thought, why don't I take that for restaurants? Because they've got different, artificial intelligence is kind of cool in general. And there's a chance we'll grow the business and add a few more restaurants in the future. And, there's the things you first think of, like robotics and stuff, which is probably not in our world so much. We're very old school barbecue guys, but there's definitely, customer engagement things you can do, the loyalty systems where you reward people for being frequent flyers and stuff like that, or just ways to communicate to them, or ways to know what they've ordered in the past so you can be more personal with them.
Yeah. Well, artificial intelligence, that's going to give you a lot of trend spotting and dig deeper, won't it?
Right. I mean, every week we try to figure out how much food to produce because we make everything in big batches. We don't cook a brisket to order. It takes 12 or 14 hours to make a brisket. So we have to know how many to make each day to fit the need.
Right.
And so kind of predictive analysis. We just do it now. We put our thumbs in the air and go, well, it's Tuesday, but it's sunny, but it's the Tuesday after the 4th of July. Wait, there's been riots. I don't know. There's enough of any assistance in that area would be greatly appreciated.
Sometimes I think of things like this, like a professional, like an Olympic level athlete. They are breaking themselves to make the smallest gains because that's what is going to define them as a champion.
Right. When you're in a business, it's at a 5 to 10% profit margin. You everything you have to be on it because it's tight.
Yeah. Let's talk about your workforce. By all accounts, you've got a good community of people that are engaged in what you do. What's your secret?
I think, it's funny when we first opened and I was trying to hire people and you would say, I'm opening a barbecue joint in Soto. Like it just sounded horrible. It sounded like, it just sounded like a little nasty place. It didn't sound charming or sweet or anything. And now we've been open for years and people get it that it's a very warm and loving place. We're very authentic about the barbecue. So we take that seriously and people appreciate that. Like Seattle loves an authentic experience. They don't want fast food or they don't want a corporate chain or a concept. They want a chef who's there and and they're doing something cool. And then the Southern hospitality thing is another important pillar for us. And it's just, welcoming people as if they were coming to your home. And and I'm a naturally friendly, service oriented guy. I'm not a mad in the kitchen yelling at people and, like that at all. It's more laid back. But I think people, it feels like a family. Everybody's nice to each other. Mm-hmm. We've had lots of drama. We've had lots of employees who come through and lose their minds or go crazy and, have fits and crawl over barbed wire fences. And, we've had lots of that, but you weed them out. You just go, you don't let them hang out. In the beginning, you kind of just had to have whoever you could hire to get to show up because it was so hard to get the ball rolling. But now that we're successful in a way and that we've been here for 5 years, people want to work here. So we can be a little more picky and if somebody doesn't work out, they don't work out. We don't have to, it's not like, well, we can never fill their place and we can't fire them until we find a replacement. We get rid of them because the drama thing is the worst thing. When
I agree.
Or somebody who was a very negative attitude, and they just put this dark cloud over the whole restaurant. It's just a dark cloud over the customers. It's just, you have to get rid of that immediately.
Yeah.
Because that can bring the whole thing down.
Yeah. I think that it not only just makes it financial sense, but even when I was running restaurants, I would rather run with a smaller crew and be slightly less efficient than to have that chaotic personality in there disrupting things, because you can't track that. Those are untrackable issues. You don't know what you don't know. What do you do for your workforce to keep them unified? I mean, what's your secret to culture?
That I give them all decision-making responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's not like me saying, here's how we're going to do it. Just do what I tell you to do. I'd say, hey, we're going to open another place. We're going to do this or that. You own it. Let me know if you need my help. So I don't micromanage, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that helps a lot. And I think I encourage them to learn new things and to kind of get out of their happy place. I'm taking this online course. I'm encouraging them to do the same. I need to do more of that myself for them. I need to find a nice little MBA program, like a 6-week one for my senior managers. They should know accounting and finance as much as I do. I mean, that's how businesses work, stuff like that. I've taken some of them back to Central Texas and done barbecue tours with them and showed them the old places to say, this is what it's all about. So they get it, deep down. And I think we have a lot of fun. I don't know. It's just a great work environment. Everybody seems happy. I mean, there's always something blowing up somewhere. It's a restaurant, but it seems like we work together to do it. And we're also not afraid to do things. Like we opened a place in the baseball stadium and we were there for a year. And then they, got rid of all their stars and they changed the terms on us. And we didn't make any money there, but it was just fun to do it. It's kind of like a badge of honor. And we almost had a deal at the airport and we tried live music, I mean, we just try things. We're not shy. It's not boring to work here. Mm-hmm. A brand new place with smokers and everything in Algona near Auburn Federal Way. I always have to explain where Algona is, down south. And it's fun because they have room for growth. People that aren't managers that can become managers, people that are managers can become senior managers, stuff like that. So I think it's an exciting business in that we have some growth.
So you keep things dynamic. You impart a lot of trust and ownership on your team, and you create opportunities and invest in them.
Right.
And all that kind of creates that, those main ingredients for unity and cohesiveness amongst your staff, so that your business can run itself and you don't have to run it yourself.
Right. Yeah. My fear in the beginning was that I'd burn out, because I thought, I'm there every day and it's crazy. And I know people that own smaller restaurants where they don't have a management team. It's just them and a couple of other, people they trust. And then, they cook all the food, they count all the money, they pay all the taxes, and they're just 5 years into it, they're dead. And so I'm lucky that this place is big enough to where I can hire a front of house manager and a kitchen manager and a pit master and, an accountant, stuff like that. So I can just do more of the top level stuff and spend more time talking to customers.
Right.
Which is fun for me.
Speaking of customers, how do you integrate with your community? I mean, what do you do as Jack Timmons or as Jack's Barbecue to connect with and become part of the fabric of your communities?
Well, we started years ago doing charity events as one of the companies, like at the American Cancer Society Gala event or at the Woodland Park Zoo Bites. Probably every single school in Seattle has sent me a request for, auction items and stuff like that. We've supported Ronald McDonald Christmas Boat Cruise charity. We've done Smooch, which is the Pete and Brandy Nordstrom charity for Children's Hospital. Those are fun because it's good for the brand.
Right.
So those are self-serving in a way. We have supported some charities specifically, like Carrot is one that helps inner city kids become entrepreneurs.
Oh, cool.
Because it's cool for me. They get a bunch of kids, 100 kids, and they test them and they pick out 30 that they think, or 20 they think, that have an entrepreneurial spirit and work well with others. They give them written exams as well as they work together to build models and stuff. And then they just help them. The YMCA supports them, gives them a place to sleep if they're homeless, or a phone if they can't, don't even have a cell phone. And these are people like 18 to 24 years old, and guys like me work with them to advise them on their business plans.
Oh, cool. That must be rewarding.
Giving people jobs.
What about your regulars? I'm sure each location you've got sort of your own little family of people, your Norms and Cliffs, who kind of come in and they just sort of belong. Tell me about that. I mean, these aren't just strangers that come in that you recognize their faces. I'm sure they've become part of the fabric of your, little sub communities.
Yeah, that is probably the funnest part of the business.
Yeah.
And for me, is talking to customers, because they're all delighted to see you as the owner and the guy, and most of them have met me. That is really a lot of fun, and that's what I try to keep doing is, doing that. It's hard to get to multiple locations, so it's mostly Soto for me. And when we open in Algona, we'll have to see how that works as well. Because I'm getting to where it's hard to spread myself out.
Right. Well, it doesn't sound like you have to spread yourself out, because as we were talking about with the workforce, you empower your people to create these spaces. The happier your people are, the happier people are going to be to spend time with them in the space that they're happy. Right.
Right. Yeah. My staff here, and some of the waiters, they hug people every day. You see them hugging people come in, they know them. There's a lot of regulars that come in, and that is the business. You can get everybody to show up once to try your food, but the regulars are the ones that sustain you over the years.
Getting a lot of requests now as we're coming out of COVID slowly for front of house training, service training about, upselling and things like that. And while there are some techniques to employ for upselling, I believe that those are very short-term goals, but creating those relationships of loyalty, that is the ultimate upsell. Nobody's getting their pockets picked. And when you have somebody who is loyal to you and is giving you their repeat business, there's no way that you can equate that on raising a check average on one visit, to get somebody that feels so connected to you that they're going to be spending their special occasions, or they want to come in once or twice or 3 times a week, when normally it would just be when they feel like eating barbecue, right?
Right. That's been the hardest part of this, is not having those people in the restaurant. I mean, if and they come in, but they're wearing a mask, you're wearing a mask, you hand them a
Right.
bag, they say, isn't this crazy? They walk out the door. It's just not fun as
Right.
it is sitting down and having a beer and having, a short conversation with them, checking in, and just, it's the joy of community and dining is really a joy, and it's sorely missed. I went out to eat for the first time last weekend, and it was just so fun to sit there and have somebody bring you a drink and bring your
Uh-huh.
meal, and chat you up a little bit. It's
I've had
just
conversations
such
like this.
a
Do we
fun part
sell
of life.
a product? Do we sell an experience, or do we sell a service? And the answer is yes. That's what we do. We are doing all of those three things at the same time. And whatever that recipe is part of what defines you as a location, but it's all of those things together. You're kind of selling a braid, you're selling a rope, you're not selling the thread.
Yep, totally agree. That's why we're in the business.
Right. So I'd like to kind of close this out by, we've kind of talked around a little bit about the effect of what COVID-19 has had on the industry. And I think that people understand, for the most part, what that is. Where do you see this leading? I'd like to kind of open this up for just kind of industry speculation. The industry was ripe for a change. It's kind of been slow to change, and disruption is the best opportunity to initiate these things. But what do you think the industry is going to look like in, say, 2022? There's a vaccine. People are kind of thrown back into their normal flow of life. What do you think the industry is going to look like then?
I mean, that's a tough question. There's
Yeah.
so many ways it could go, I think for Seattle, the biggest change will be maybe the lack of dining downtown. I mean, downtown was expensive and you had to charge more to make a living down there. And it kind of started weeding out the middle guys. You either were fine dining or you're fast food.
Right.
It's just either you're running as cheap as you can possibly go, or you're El Gauchos and you're charging $200 because people want that experience and they're willing to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then hopefully the news cycle will just go into something else. Like I was hoping Trump and Biden would just get in a fist fight, and one of them would die, and then there's your next president, something like that, to get people talking about something else. Because
a deathmatch election. Is that what you're proposing, Jack? That we
yeah, I wouldn't take long for those two guys. Would love to do it.
They might die getting winded just climbing in the ring. So the industry's gotten a lot more attention now than it's ever had before. It became essential, frontline. People are starting to understand, what we've been talking about with these low profit margins and these marginalized communities that populate our industry. For instance, once upon a time, you keep getting all of these regulations coming down from local or state municipalities, and it's almost as if the perception is that a restaurant owner is a mustache-twirling villain who's fueling their yachts with the corpses of their downtrodden workforce. And now I think that the public at large is starting to see, restaurants work hard. They work hard for their people, and they're all struggling together. Do you think that change in perception, that greater real insight into a restaurateur and a restaurant's reality, do you think that's going to have an impact on the way restaurants occupy that space in our culture?
That's really interesting. I think I do. I think that people are really appreciating the small businesses and the restaurants in their communities. I think some of the big chains are going out of business.
Yeah.
Even though they have deep pockets, they just don't have the support. Like if it's a big chain, you kind of feel sorry for the employees, but you don't know the owner. He doesn't say hello. She doesn't say hello to you when she walks through the restaurant. It's just a colder experience. Whereas we've had a ton of love from people coming in saying, we're here for you. We want you to exist. We know you're getting whipped right now. And so we're here to support you. And it's been super sweet. So I think that it'll be more support for the local guys and maybe a little less support for the bigger guys.
Yeah.
You want the place that what's my priority here? Is it fast food or the concept place where I don't know who the hell anybody is, or is it the place where I can actually talk to people and have a communal experience?
Yeah, I hope that too. I hope, because a lot of restaurants are going to go out of business, and there's going to be some vacancies. There's going to be a vacuum, and what's going to fill that? I hope it's people like you. I hope it's those smaller operators that are connected to their staff and their community, and they're ready to take on this rewarding challenge of running a risky business?
Right. Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm doing this all for fun.
Huh.
You know, it's just like it was a whimsical thing to get into the business, and we're doing well and everybody's having a good time doing it. So I don't worry too much about, the bottom line.
Yeah.
You have to stay in business and everything like that, but that's not what I lose sleep over.
Right.
So I think we're going to be okay. We're flexible enough to survive, and our food, it's what people want. They want something. They want something soulful.
Right.
We're like a quality, soulful kind of food.
Mhm.
So people want that, and I think we'll be able to stay in there. I don't think barbecue is a trendy thing that will go out of fashion anytime soon.
No, as long as there's meat to eat, it'll get barbecued, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jack, is there anything that you would like to add to this conversation that we haven't really brought up? Are we missing anything? All right, Jack, why don't you tell us how people can learn more about Jack's Barbecue, and then I'll just thank you generously for all your time.
Yeah, well, if you go to our website at jacksbbq.com, you can see the locations and how to order from us. And we also have links to fun stuff in there, and events eventually when we start doing prime rib night and stuff like that. So that's where everything's at, is jacksbbq.com.
Do you collect an email list to let people know what's going on and where it's happening?
We do. We have a place you can put your email on that homepage, and then
Right.
we'll include you in our newsletters. We talk about all the specials we do. We did beef short plate ribs, which are these giant Flintstone ribs, like a foot long. With
Flintstones. Tip your
2
car
pounds.
over.
We do those for Father's Day, and we do them on Tuesdays here at Settle. There's stuff like that you need to know about.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack Timmons, the owner of Jack's Barbecue in the greater Seattle area and expanding outward into even greater Seattle areas. I really appreciate you coming on to Infinite Restaurants and sharing your insight and your story. And I can't wait to learn more about meat doctors and barbecue raves. Thank you, Jack. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.